Normally, I like to start these episodes off with like what's going on in the world right now that's like Gilmore related. But the only thing that I really care about is the fact that Stan's book comes out this week. I think in like 2 days or
Yeah, the
1 day.
13th. So buy it now because he was nice enough to talk to us.
Yeah. So if you've missed it, last week's episode was an interview with him. He gave us some tidbits of things that are going to be in the book, tidbits about his life, just amazing content in general. Like he's just an amazing human. And I think everyone needs to hear him speak at least once in your life.
Yeah, I think we're both debating taking a personal day
April 16th.
on the day, well, on that day, but also on the day of the book release because it's going to be snowing anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go to work.
Yeah, I feel like that seems like a solid thing. A foot of snow. Stan, did you send that to us just to make sure we could take the day off? But yeah, so if you didn't already pre-order, do that. Also go listen to his interview because it's the most amazing thing ever. And make sure that you share it around. We would love to talk to more Gilmore Girls people, crew, cast, anything related to the show. And to do that, we need to have...
I'd be fine with talking to the janitorial staff of the shoot.
Anyone tangentially related, I'm in. So, but we need to have more people that listen. So share us around and help us do that. Because if you like those interviews, yeah. But I am Shay.
I'm Tyler.
And this is Oi with the Pot Already. We are moving into our recap of episode 7, which is Kiss and Tell.
Yes, Kiss and Tell, which has a lot going on. Not necessarily references heavy in this first podcast episode, but there's a decent amount going on.
There's a lot going on, and I feel like it's a different vibe. I feel like it's a different tone than all of the other episodes so far. And I think we both have different opinions on this. So I think I wanted to start with the fact that you mentioned that you weren't as big a fan of this episode.
Yeah, I do think that for me, this was probably the first episode that I could see that it was not building on itself necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't building on the foundation that they had. And it felt like a weaker episode than the previous episode to me.
It's so interesting to me because I feel like this is the first episode where it's really kind of hit its stride. It's like it knows who its characters are. It's not trying to intro things anymore. It's not trying to like give us things so that we have this context for later. It's like, hey, you know who the characters are, and now we're in it. Like this is the show. This is the people. Let's move forward.
Except they're still introducing new characters because literally.
But do they introduce Taylor? Do they? Is he introduced?
He is just dropped in. Like he's
part of the town. And if you didn't know it already, you should have, basically, is how the show handles it.
He's been here the whole time. You just haven't noticed yet.
Yeah.
Is how it felt.
Which I love because I love the fact that it feels like you're just now part of the town. Like you're expected to, as a viewer, to just know what goes on. You're supposed to understand the dynamics. Like, come on, let's go. Get up to speed.
We don't have time to spoon feed you the information. You need to catch up.
Yeah, which I think is adorable. And I love that. So I just think it's interesting because you didn't feel that way. But I had a theory. So this is the first episode where we are literally only in Stars Hollow. We stay in Stars Hollow. We have no interaction with Chilton. We have no interaction with Richard and Emily. It's Stars Hollow entirely. But there's also no Stars Hollow like quirkiness for the most part. I mean, yes, there's a Taylor fight, but there's not a lot of like storylines going on with other characters. And I mean, wonder if that did that, like if that changed things for you.
It did kind of feel a little bit shallower or more shallow. I think that is probably a fair criticism of this episode because it seemed more one-dimensional without those other moments, those other parts of everyday life. Like she just magically doesn't go to school for an entire week or however long.
I think this is supposed to be like a short time frame. This is like a day.
It's a day, but how
it could be a Saturday.
I don't know. There's something missing from this.
Well, no, she did go to school because she gets off the bus before she goes to Doosey's. So I think she came from school, right? Because she's in her uniform.
I don't know. It makes no damn sense. It's
well, so yeah, I will say that while this is a important episode for the show to me, and I enjoy this episode, I will say that I did miss like the multiple storylines that normally happen in the show. This one did not seem to have that. It seemed to be very focused on Rory and Dean, and everything that happened outside of that was like to further that plot. It wasn't really
I think that's fair. I mean, I part of it for me is missing that parallel story because you have the opportunity to have Max and Lorelai have their first kiss and have it mirror Dean and Rory, and they're both reluctant to tell each other that I got kissed. Like it had that missing duality that is ubiquitous for the rest of the show.
Yeah, I will agree with you there, but I still love this episode. Okay, so we should start with talking about the title. The title of the show is Kiss and Tell. If you don't know.
I am aware. We've already covered that
Do you have a theory as to why it's called Kiss and Tell?
because she got kissed and then didn't tell.
Oh, so we're just going to go with just plain, it's just a boring reason.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, so first of all, it could be a reference to a Shirley Temple movie from 1945. They've already referenced Shirley Temple in the last episode, so it's possible. And the plot of that was that two girls were having trouble with their parents because they were starting to become interested in boys, which I think Mrs. Kim and Lorelai are both struggling with that in this episode.
No, Mrs. Kim is not struggling with it. She's in full denial. She is 100% no, my daughter's not interested in boys. She's going to find the nice boy that I set her up with, and that's going to be it. And that there is no conversation, no discussion. That will be reality because I can't deal with anything else.
I don't think it's that. I think that she didn't enjoy her time with boys, so she doesn't think her daughter will. So she's like protecting her from having to deal with boys in that way, if you know what I mean. The other option is the idiom kiss and tell, which do you know the full idiom?
I don't.
It's and if he needs must kiss and tell, I'll kick him all the way to hell.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's Dean going to hell.
Yeah, it's basically like share if people need to share this information, this sexual information out to the world, then I'll kill him. Like Lorelai basically says she will murder Dean if he does anything to her, if he causes any problems. So I mean, I think it's an interesting idiom.
It's also exactly the opposite of what happens. She tells literally one person and the entire town knows. Like it's not.
You think Lorelai only told one person?
No, I'm talking Rory. Like before she kissed him in public, it's already out there. Like there's no telling.
There were probably photographers, paparazzi. There was
Miss Patty from like six buildings away goes, my spider senses are tingling, and something happened with
the
gossip.
Cool drink of water and our golden child.
Well, there's just it's that whole moment of like, I'm paying attention now. What's going on? I sense a disturbance in the force.
Yeah, basically. I did want to note that this episode was written by a Genji Cohan. I hope I'm saying that right. But it's a writer that also worked on Orange is the New Black and also worked on a few other pretty big shows. But they made a comment that working on this show was actually pretty complicated for them because ASP apparently, according to them, didn't want a writer's room. It was forced to have a writer's room based on, I think it was the WB. And because of that, she would only take ideas from the writer's room, but then write everything herself, which I thought was interesting because we just had an interview with a writer and they did not seem to have the same experience. So I don't know if that evolved over time.
He did mention that the writer's room for this show was incredibly small by comparison to Roseanne and other shows that Stan worked on.
Fair.
He said Roseanne was the biggest with like 20 plus writers because they were bringing in all their comedian friends to write for the show. This one, he said there was like 5 people, which to me sounds like not enough people given how much dialogue and how much writing had to go into the show.
That's fair, but he did make it sound like ASP was willing to like take ideas and allow people to have like kind of more of a free range for the script. So I wonder if that evolved over time.
I think that's also him. Like
because he's amazing and he's Stan.
It's a Stan exception, and it's not the normal exception for people that she's not comfortable with and doesn't have a good rapport with.
That could be. I would be so interested to listen to writers over the seasons and see what their experience was and how the experience evolved as the show went on. But I do think this is the only episode written by this specific writer. And I do think that you can see that. Like you can see the difference in this episode versus other ones, like, the Dan ones or the ASP written ones. Like you can definitely see there's a difference.
Well, there's just right off the bat, way fewer references out of the gate.
And the references that are there are ones that I have literally no clue about. So we'll get to those. But the opening scene here, Lorelai and Rory are walking down the street and they're having quite a convo.
They're talking about laundry and how no one wants to do laundry.
Oh, that's not what they're talking about. Go ahead. Keep going.
It's talking about undergarments and how Lorelai has made an executive decision that she would rather forego wearing underwear than having to do laundry.
I mean, look, we've all been there. We all have been in the place where we're like, look, do I really need to do the laundry? Who's gonna know? We've all been there.
I mean, yeah, that's a universal human experience because laundry is like the worst chore ever. It's awful.
It is. And also the amount that it costs to buy new undergarments. It really, I mean, I don't feel like it outweighs the stress of doing laundry.
Continually buy new underwear forever rather than do some wash.
I mean,
I'm not saying that that's the wrong answer.
There is the other side of people who literally have underwear that it's like labeled Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they have to make sure that those specific ones are ready for those days. And like, I don't have that kind of organization in my life, so that would not happen. I'd be definitely wearing a Wednesday on a Monday and all of those things because, I mean, who's checking is what I want to know.
Well, it's the old, God forbid you get in an accident and you have to go to the emergency room and you're wearing old underwear. Like that's...
I mean, let's be honest.
That's the story that your mother always used to scare you into changing your underwear.
Okay, but let's be fair. If Lorelai got into an accident not wearing any undergarments in this episode, do you think she would have any trouble with anybody giving her help or shame of any kind from any of the EMT workers or any of that?
No, I think that is the loophole. Not having any underwear, you can't be judged for old underwear because it doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, and I feel like she'd probably get more help if we're being completely honest based on her interactions with the men in the show. So I don't think it's a problem. I think we were scared into believing that was such a big bad problem, but really it's not. I related this to the fact that this is what I do when I travel. I am the type of person that once I realize I need like 10 days worth of clothing or something, I'm like, oh yeah, that's too much laundry. We're just going to buy new clothes, obviously.
You pack your suitcase intentionally leaving behind things so you have an excuse to go buy things because it's not prohibitively expensive.
Yeah, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I didn't bring a sweatshirt. It's so weird. I must have forgotten. Guess I had to buy one.
I didn't bring socks. Oh, I have to buy a 6-pack of socks for $10.
I think that's the only time I've ever bought like undergarments and socks is before we go on a trip. I'm like, oh, let's just get like a whole plethora of them.
Or buy them when you get there because you forgot them.
And you just buy like a whole plethora of them when you've never needed to buy that abundance ever before. So, it's a very relatable thing. They then go into Luke's diner. And I just want to say this conversation doesn't end, which I didn't realize the first time. Like this underwear conversation is going to continue. But we see Taylor for the first time. And you screamed it at the TV right away. You're like, there's Taylor.
Yes, I did. Because he is such a fundamentally crucial part of the show in that he's the person in town that everyone can coalesce around and hate because he's the worst person. Like
he's not the worst.
He's the person that you love to just not like, and you bond over that with other people.
But you'd be sad if he wasn't in the show.
But fine, but it's that central. You need someone to be the reason that you are friends with other people. Sometimes
he is also. I feel like, how we said in, I don't know if it was last episode or what, but we said that Paris has been having some humanizing moments where we're like, okay, she's bad, but she's not Tristan. I feel like this is Luke's that. Like, Luke is a grumpy person, but he's not Taylor.
But he's also already had a lot of endearing moments in the show without Taylor involved at all.
But he's such a good foil for Taylor. Like, Taylor and Luke, like, they're so... Those scenes, I tell you, they just make me so happy every time. And every time I'm always on Luke's side, even though, honestly, Luke is being the curmudgeon. Let's just call it.
It is interesting that you say that because Taylor does all of the things for the town. And in his mind, he's the reason the town exists in the first place. And he gets crap from everyone. And everyone just dislikes Taylor.
Yeah.
And then Luke goes out of his way to be gruff and grumpy and just a pain for everyone. But everyone in the town is like, oh, Luke, you got to go to Luke. Luke's great. He's just wonderful. Such a good guy.
What do you think the reason for this is? Is it just that Luke is attractive? Is it that Luke is younger? Is it just, I don't know, that Luke has more friends in the town? Like, why is that?
So I think it's the age difference between Taylor and Luke, because Luke grew up in the town and Taylor grew up in the town, presumably. As well. But he's already past that. All of the people that remember Taylor as a kid, like 5 years old.
They're dead? Are you trying to say they're dead?
A lot of them have gone, yeah.
This is dark.
And then Luke, all of the older people in town, Miss Patty, Babette, Taylor, all of them still remember Luke from when he was in middle school and high school, like he was a kid.
So they're giving him a pass because they saw him grow up.
Yeah,
Grow up.
you have that mental block sometimes where you're like, that kid was 5 years old when I met them. They're still 5 years old, even though they're 20 now. Like,
so it's a different perspective because really Luke is the curmudgeon here.
yeah.
So the argument that they're having is the Autumn Festival is coming to Stars Hollow, and it is a Thanksgiving festival. And Luke does not want to decorate. He's just not interested in it. I mean, this is not the first time we're going to see Luke being uninterested in decorating for pretty much anything. And, you know, they're talking about paper turkeys, talking about streamers, and Luke is absolutely
Pilgrims.
Yeah, Pilgrims. Luke is like, I don't care, not doing this. And Taylor is like, but you need to. So I guess, do you think that Luke should have just given in and you know, put up a freaking paper turkey or something? How do you feel?
See, it's complicated because you can't give in to terrorists. You can't just once you give an inch, Taylor's gonna take a mile. Like he's exactly the person that you give him anything, that's his door, that's his window to then take it too far.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, would it have killed Luke to just like, I don't know, make a freaking turkey napkin for his diner or something? I don't know, like just something simple that he could have done, or just put up a little bit of things on the wall.
Nothing would have satisfied Taylor unless it was exactly how he wanted it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They've had this. This is not the first time they've had this argument.
This is the first time.
Well, it is the first time, but it's not the first time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So I envision in my head that Luke at one point was at least somewhat accommodating, and then Taylor just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And then Luke, over years of this, has realized it's not worth the time. Like,
it's
no.
Yeah. It's not worth it. And we will learn very quickly that there is one way that Luke will decide to decorate anything for any time, but doesn't happen in this episode, which is interesting. They do mention while they're talking about a Horn of Plenty, and I'm assuming History Tyler has done some recon on this to talk about why we call it Horn of Plenty and
It's the
cornucopia,
all of that. I mean, there are a bunch of references throughout history. It's related to Greek mythology at times and the Pilgrims, which are ubiquitous in New England. That's kind of our thing,
as well as the Puritans. But yes,
yeah. So it's a very Thanksgiving Day vibe.
Does everyone know what Horn of Plenty is? I don't. It's pretty ubiquitous, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we might have people that listen outside of the country, and then they might not. I don't know.
Well, it's a giant horn woven horn. It's like a basket horn.
Yeah,
full of food. Basically, it's apples.
I don't think this is a very
fruit.
good descriptor.
Yeah.
We're not doing so good here.
No, but it's just it's tied very much to Thanksgiving, fall in New England, and all towns in New England seemingly do have some kind of autumn fest. Like it's a thing.
Yeah, it is definitely a thing. Now, do you want to briefly explain what Thanksgiving is supposed to celebrate? I'm sure that everybody on the pod that's listening knows this, but I feel like it's like important.
Interesting saw a Gilmore Girls reference from someone that is outside of the United States.
Okay.
And they were talking about the American Thanksgiving holiday. And they're like, it's very complicated, all of these things. And it was interesting to see someone's outside perspective. The story is the Pilgrims came to here and they did not have enough food.
Came to United States and specifically Massachusetts, where we live currently.
To Plymouth.
Yeah.
Hit a rock, which we'll get into in a minute.
We'll get into it. That's a thing.
Were in a very bad way in their first winter here. And so the Pilgrims were helped out by the Native Americans. And to show their appreciation, they had a celebratory meal and dinner after they were more established and more on their feet. And that's where Thanksgiving comes from.
Okay, so you just gave us the very New England version of what actually happened in Thanksgiving. Do you want to give like the more true story, or are we're just gonna Americanize everything around here?
That's the nuts and bolts of it. You want to go for it?
I mean, I don't fully know, to be honest with you, but I do know that it's way more complicated than that. I mean, when we say that the Native Americans helped us, we took quite advantage of the Native Americans.
Fair,
and
but they did definitely help us with planting different types of crops and showing us how to survive in this new world. So they might have made a tactical mistake on that, Because,
out of the kindness of their hearts, they helped the people
Yeah.
that was stealing their land. So I think we should just call a spade and
Yeah,
say that we celebrate.
way nicer than we were
Yeah,
historically.
I think a lot of us, I don't know if it's a across the world thing, but I think a lot of us now, we don't celebrate stealing Native Americans' lands because that's horrible, and the way that it happened shouldn't have happened that way, but more it's become a giving thanks to those who have helped us in our lives and like being grateful for what we have.
Yeah, it may not have had the most Thanksgiving nature originally. They were very thankful to not starve to death, I'm sure, but it has evolved into more of a giving thanks for all of the impactful things in your life, whether it's friends, family. It's also an excuse to eat a lot of food.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like when you're not in the country, I've seen a lot of people discuss it and they're like, I don't really understand. Like, are you celebrating pillaging people? And it's like, I mean, also, most of the people that are saying it probably don't have a right to say it because y'all did it too. But we don't celebrate that. I think a lot of us recognize
It's a time for friends and family. It's a time to just appreciate the things in your life, really.
Yeah. So it is quite wholesome. And I feel like the festival was probably pretty adorable. And Luke being all poo-poo on it is just his curmudgeonness. One of the funny references that come up in this scene is basically Taylor is saying, like, you got to be a human at some point and join this town. Like, you need to, like, join in with the rest of us and stop being the curmudgeon self that you are. And Luke says, I think my pod must be defective, which, from what I can tell, is a reference to Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes, there's a book and multiple movies about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I would imagine that they're probably referencing the 1978 version, just because that's the most recent of them for the show. So it's alien pod organisms come to the Earth and start cloning people into emotionless zombie people. And
they're supposed to assimilate.
Yeah,
I think that's the important part here. They're supposed to assimilate to seem like everyone else, and Luke has not assimilated.
Well, no, I think everyone else around him, Luke, is a pod person, and they're just going with it, and they're agreeing to put up with Taylor's baggage for the town, and then he refuses to, so his pod was broken, so he's the odd man out.
Yeah, which I love the thought that Luke is, well, they're all aliens and living in this like crazy mixed up world, because from all intents and purposes, Stars Hollow definitely seems like a alien world, because I have not seen anywhere that is this, I don't know, perfect and just idealistic. Like that, we live in New England and there's no towns like that. So
there are towns like that. Actually, we go to several of them all of the time.
Not that perfect, but in the scene, Lorelai decided.
Before we move on from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, who is in Invasion of the Body Snatchers that we've mentioned like 7 times
on this podcast?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know.
Jeff Goldblum again.
Oh, love Jeff
Goldblum. He's been in like 6 different references so far.
So maybe ASP loves him too.
I mean, who doesn't love Jeff Goldblum?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
it's really hard not to. And if you don't, please don't leave me comments. Okay, so in this scene, while this is all going on, Lorelai and Rory want coffee and muffins. They keep screaming it, and they're not getting the attention that they need, which we learn very quickly in this show. Lorelai needs attention immediately, which relatable. And so she goes behind the counter, and she doesn't get yelled at like Suki did when he went behind the counter, which I think is telling of Luke's feelings towards Lorelai.
So I think it's partly she's serving herself. She's not serving other customers.
She is serving Rory.
It's not the same as serving some random person and putting your hands in their food. Because
I mean, no, but he was very accommodating. He was just like, don't use your hands, and gave her tongs, and he was perfectly fine with it. But Rory decides during this interaction, which you had to rewind for me because I totally missed it, but decides during the interaction that since they're not getting attention, the way she's going to get attention.
My mom is not wearing underwear, and just goes right for the target. Just target audience goes, yep, that's what men think.
Yeah, and neither Taylor nor Luke reacted. They did not stop their argument. Nobody reacted. Nobody said anything. No one
from one of the other tables as the extras reacted to that.
Nobody turned around. Nothing.
That is a crowd silencing expression. Like, you say that, every person has had that experience where the diner goes dead quiet right as you're screaming that. And then everyone turns.
Well, and it reminds me of like those moments when you're like in the middle of a discussion, you're trying to get heard and no one is listening. Nobody is stopping talking. And you say something so outlandish because you know that nobody is listening and no one's ever going to hear it. And then silence as you're
No.
speaking, and everyone's just like, huh? Looking at you like crazy. Nothing didn't happen. She screams, my mom is not wearing underwear. Nothing changes. They just keep going. The diner's going on as it was. Very interesting. But Luke did hear that because...
Yes, he did. Spectacular comeback.
Yeah, so he goes to get the money that she left for the muffins and the coffee, and he's like, no tip. And she's like, yeah, here's a tip. Serve your customers. And he's like, well, here's a tip. Don't sit on cold benches. And I'm like, whoa, man. Like...
I am shocked. Did you catch that the first time you watched this?
Definitely not.
When it was on TV live?
No, because I think for me, I was just thinking like, oh, it's cold in New England and she's in a skirt is what I was thinking. And I also don't know that I necessarily noticed that Rory screamed that. I think I was like so focused on that Taylor and Luke that I didn't notice that. But you mentioned that this has to do with male selective hearing. And I wonder if it's also how I received the show. So we can talk about male selective hearing.
So it's just a difference between men and women. And we will get to a female version of this later in this episode. But it doesn't matter. It's selective hearing. It's the peripheral vision. Like it's just hardwired into guys to notice certain things.
Well, and I wonder if it's how we received the show differently, because I was listening to Taylor and Luke arguing and I missed that Rory yelled that, where you picked up on that right away. So I'm wondering like if we were tuned into different parts of the conversation because of the fact that men and women listen to things differently and care about different topics.
I think that might be a fair assessment because you can be in the middle of a conversation and then you hear something just out of pocket from somewhere else and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to store that one in the back of my mind. I go, yeah, that's a memory now.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes me laugh because like there'll be times in like we're out in public or whatever, and I'll leave and I'll be like, oh my gosh, did you just hear that table over there was talking about this juicy gossipy thing? And you're like, not a word. Didn't hear a single thing. But if they talked about like, I don't know, something to do with the NFL or something, you would have absolutely walked out of there and been like, did you hear what they just said? We need to look that up.
I am for the most part a very bad example of this because I'm horrifyingly oblivious at all times.
So bad. I know when I can say things you will absolutely never hear.
I have definitely picked up on things and said, hey, they were just talking about the NFL, or hey, they were just talking about this random thing. And you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's select. We both have selective hearing, but the male one definitely leans towards the sexual nature of things.
It's certain biological impulses. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that's fair. Now, since we're talking about sexual impulses, I wanted to note that I was looking on the internet for, references and things, just make sure we didn't miss anything. And I found an article that stated that there was a lot of sexual innuendos and quips in this. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I love a good sex joke. I'm all about that. And it mentioned that in this scene particularly, and then in a later scene that we're going to talk about, there was a sex joke related to Taylor pulling Pilgrims out of his pocket.
I got nothing.
I'm just putting it out there. I'm just going to ask people if anybody knows what that could be.
If someone could explain this joke to us,
if the person who writes, I think it's called Gilmore Girls Annotated. I think that's the one I found it on. I look at a few different sites. I think that's the one. If you possibly come across this, if you could just let me know, because I'm here for a good sex joke. I literally have racked my brain.
We've been sitting here puzzling this over for hours now, and
I've got nothing. And then the other one that was mentioned was when Rory mentions her thickening needs when she gets to the cornstarch part. And I just want to put it out there that I still got nothing. I have no idea what that could mean. I was just presuming she was making a joke that she doesn't, because she doesn't cook. Like that's a big joke in the show, that she was basically making a joke like, yeah, I've got thickening needs. Like obviously I don't need cornstarch because I clearly don't cook is where I thought she was going with it.
I mean, the only thing, and it doesn't work because this came about after the show aired, is she wants to be thick, I guess. I don't know.
That's
a stretch.
Yeah.
First off. Second off, no.
So if anyone can explain those sex jokes to me, I would very much appreciate it because I just don't get it. And if there are others in the show that we miss, like I'm here for a good sex joke. So like, let's just send those my way. The Oi with the Pot Already Instagram. I would love to be blown up with those. Thank you. So the next scene, Rory gets off the bus, which insinuates that she was at Chilton because she's in a Chilton uniform, but who knows? and heads into Doosey's market.
Yeah. And you see Taylor being his
Taylor self.
Mhm. Trying to perfectionist the can display of the Mayflower. And he's just going, I don't think it really looks like the Mayflower. And then poor Dean, because that boss is the worst boss.
Yeah.
He goes, you want me to go back to the Plymouth Rock display? And Taylor's just going, nah, maybe. I don't know. And it's just make up your damn mind.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Now, do you want to explain what the Mayflower and or Plymouth Rock is? And just in case there's anybody that's living under a Plymouth Rock. Sorry.
Proud of yourself.
Yeah, really, really.
So the Mayflower is the ship that the Pilgrims came over on from England. And Plymouth Rock is a bullshit rock. Everyone in New England, everyone in Massachusetts has gone to Plymouth Rock on a school trip. And it is the single most disappointing school field trip you can go on in New England. It's awful. It's not 0 out of 10. It is not worth it. First off, the rock is not impressive.
Not at all. It's small. It's a little thing.
Like it's almost big enough that you could, or almost small enough that you could pick up the rock. It's probably 400 or 500 pounds, which is heavy, but that's a small rock.
It's small. Yeah.
And then it's also not actually anything to do with the Pilgrims because they just picked a random rock.
Now, did you know that before this? Because I didn't know that part.
I had heard that. It's one of those things that I'd heard and forgotten. Because it doesn't matter. It's a garbage rock. It's a dumb thing.
Yeah. So explain how Plymouth Rock became Plymouth Rock.
So 121 years after the Pilgrims had landed, in the 1700s, this 90-year-old man points at a rock and says, "That's the rock my dad told me about that they stepped on when they landed here."
Because, of course, you would remember the specific rock.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And so they carved it and they saved it and they've made it into a shameless tourist trap item. Like it's a way for Plymouth to draw in people to come see a stupid rock.
I mean, yeah, because apparently the fact that it is the first place that the Pilgrims landed isn't enough. There needs to be a fake rock for us to all see, because clearly that's what we all need in our life. And people take photos. I don't know if you've seen the meme of, I forgot who the actor is, but there's an actor who there's a meme where he's like doing a peace sign in front of like a gravestone or something.
Yeah.
But people have inserted Plymouth Rock in there of like, just like, this is where the Pilgrims landed. And it's like, it's so ridiculous. It's so, but I don't know that people outside of New England realize just how ridiculous that rock is.
It's a garbage rock. It's not even a good rock. Like,
it doesn't even make sense. Like, if you're gonna randomly choose a rock, pick a majestic rock, like something like impressive and like, that's the rock. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, bring in a rock, have a rock audition, like have different rocks and go, no, not that one. Not that one.
Yeah, like lie better, man.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, especially because you're it, right? You're the one that remembers. So you could literally like spend some time doing your recognizance and be like, all right, what kind of rocks we got out here? What's gonna be impressive? What's gonna make my dad look like the like epic human that I know he is? But like, what can I share that through? What rock will really show that? And instead, he's just kind of like, that one. That seems good.
Oh, it's such a letdown. If you're not from New England and you've never been to Plymouth Rock,
don't go.
Don't. It's 0 out of 10. It's not worth the time to drive.
I mean, I have so many thoughts. If you're a New Englander, Massachusettser, you went to a lot of things as a kid to learn about the Pilgrims and to learn about the Puritans and to learn about all of that.
If you're going to go somewhere in Massachusetts that you want to have a good time, go to Salem. Salem's better. It's better.
Yeah, Salem is way better. But I'm just saying there's other things we've had to do, and that'll probably come up at some point because it's a very New England show. But that is one of the most boring. Literally standing around. You can't even see because there's so many people standing around. And it's like down. It's not on a pedestal. It's not somewhere like you can like easily see. No. It's down. So if you're short like me and there are tall people in front of you, forget it. You're not seeing it.
I'm pretty sure the time I went, there was like spray paint on the rock because someone went down and tagged it.
People throw things in there too because it's got like a square like barrier around it. People like throw crap in there. I don't know what is the situation down there. Plymouth, get your act together. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, and also I just wanted to mention, I don't know if can display things are like popular in every grocery store everywhere, but There has been some strange ones in the world, and I just wanted to mention that. I'm sure right now, if we head to the supermarket right now, there is some can display or something
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl related. It's gonna be like colorful, and it's gonna be like, I don't know, in T Swift's face, or like
no, it's gonna be
number 89.
It's gonna be a football helmet. I saw it yesterday.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah,
Oh.
there's a can display in Stop and Shop. It's not cans. It's the soda packs.
Okay.
The 12 packs of soda.
Is this the most economical use of our grocery store employees' times? I'm just wondering, like, does this, when you see that, because I know my answer, but when you see that, do you think to yourself, you know what, I really need something out of that display right now? That's what I'm going to buy today. I wasn't planning on it, but I saw that display, and now, you know what, I am.
You can't, because then it ruins the display.
Right, because you don't want to be the person that's like, I'm going to play Jenga, and now
I'm going to take the football player's face.
Right. So basically what they've done is made people walk into the store and be like, I need some soda. And they're like, but I don't need that soda. So you know what? Maybe I didn't need it that bad. And I've saved money. Thank you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's every time I see can displays or other displays in a grocery store, I just think, nice art, but you've made me not spend money. Good job. So now we are in Doosey's, and we're about to hit the scene of the show. The whole reason this episode
happens. It's an early
happens.
Climax shot of a show. Like, it's in the first 3 minutes of the show.
They really climaxed early here.
I'm gonna let that linger.
But so she is there looking randomly at shelves, and she ends up at the cornstarch aisle because I think that was probably her best view.
Well, it's that, and she's not actually paying attention to where she is in the store. She's paying attention to where she is in eye line of why she's in the store.
Yeah, which, I mean, fair. And he comes over to her and basically is making fun of her for basically looking at cornstarch when he knows clearly she is not here for cornstarch. And she says the thickening needs situation that we've already discussed. And they have their little cute back and forth. And then he decides he wants to play a game with her. So he's going to give her a free soda if she can figure out what hand he's got the soda in. Yeah?
Yeah. Which is both of them, somehow. He's setting up a game so that she wins.
Which is such an interesting game, because now you don't have free hands, but it's fine. It's fine.
Did he need free hands for this moment?
Apparently not. Oh. But this leads to another reference where he calls the soda pop, and he's like, give me a break. I'm from Chicago. And she's like, well, here in Connecticut, we call it free soda.
Oh, I'm going to go all in on this.
I have a chart. Okay, I've got a chart.
So, is it soda? Is it pop? Is it soft drink? Is it fizzy drink? Is it Coke? Is it cola?
And you probably didn't capture them all. Let's just say that.
There is only one right answer. It is soda.
Right. Well, so here's the thing. The people who call it Coke, I'm sorry, I'm going to be really controversial right now. You're wrong. Because if I ask, and look, I love my husband. I do. I love you. But you're not really the best at picking things up. You know, you don't pick up what I'm putting down. If you ask
me for a Coke and I come back and I have a Coke and you say, I wanted a ginger ale, I get to be mad at you for giving me bad instructions.
And it's one of the few times. Like, if I said, I want a soda, and you didn't ask me what kind of soda I wanted, now I can be mad at you because you don't have any context.
No, but if you say, I want a Coke, and I come back with a Coke.
Right. So the people that say Coke are wrong because there's not enough context here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now,
fundamentally, those people are the worst in terms of being correct.
And apparently Coke actually predicted that this was going to happen. And they made a commercial to try and combat the fact that people were going to use Coke as a ubiquitous term for anything that was like a carbonated drink. And they were like basically saying, use our whole name, Coca-Cola. Don't say Coke because this is going to happen. And people just didn't care. And it happened anyway. And from what I can tell from my research, I really looked into this, is it's mostly southern states. And people are saying it's because they weren't here as long. And I don't understand really what the reason there is.
No, it's because Coke is based in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's spread out from Georgia. If you order something that's not Coke in Georgia, you get run out of the state. Like, they do not like it.
So Pepsi is a no-go there?
Oh, no. No.
See, here, it's very often, well, what happens is they'll be like, can I have a Coke? And they're like, is Pepsi okay? Like, that's what you hear.
Yeah, but they're not going to judge you if you just... Whatever.
No, they just feel really bad. We have the less superior one. We know. But I did want to actually mention where soda and pop come from. I don't know the rest of them because I'm not a linguist, but soda comes from sodium bicarbonate. So it's just a shortened version of that. And then pop is basically onomatopoeia. You knew I was going to say it because I really love that word. I say it all the time. Literally, I'm not making a joke. I say that word too much. It's onomatopoeia because of the sound it makes when you open the glass bottle.
Yep.
So I think that's cool. So like for cool factor, the pop people win. I'm all about onomatopoeia. I love it. You win the coolest factor. It's still wrong. It just is.
So by the numbers, which is the most common by people?
See, now the thing is, I pulled up a chart. I don't know if you got the same chart as me. And it's gradiated.
Yep.
Gradiated? Is that the right word? Yeah, gradiated. And from what I see from the gradient, it would appear to me that pop is the most popular. But I am not sure I'm reading the chart right.
Well, that's the chart. I have a different chart, but it's a similar chart. But the problem is, where are all the people?
I'm going to be really biased right now. I'm going to say all the people are in Boston, New York, and California.
Right. Look at the map.
So we're right, is what you're saying? Because Boston, New York, and California call it soda, according to the map.
By percentage of the country, by number of people.
This feels like, I'm going to get real. Ignore me if you don't like political commentary, but this feels a lot like the whole land can't vote. That's what it feels like here.
It basically
That's
is.
what it feels like.
It basically is. So of the entire country, 19% say Coke. So they're just straight wrong.
They're wrong. But
wrong.
I'm sorry. I
the
don't feel bad about it.
The least amount of people, and it's a brand. It's not an actual thing. Wrong. 23% say pop.
Interesting.
47% of the country says soda.
So by law of numbers, we're right.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we are right. Majority rules. Thank you very much.
Pop users must assimilate because soda is already halfway there.
You really had a cool thing going, but you're not going to make fetch happen. Now we should acknowledge I have quite a collection of friends from the UK and multiple different ones. I'm not sure how we got here, but we did. And they have other names for soda, which was fizzy pop and fizzy drink.
Yes.
Now, I've never heard any of my friends actually say that. And I don't know if they're doing that for my benefit. And I'm going to have to send some messages out after this podcast because I've never heard that. They've all said soda to me. So they might be doing it for my benefit. But is that because of the fact that it's carbonated? So it's like fizzy. And then also, how does that distinguish between like carbonated water, like, like my ices that have carbonation in it and other things like that? Like, how are we distinguishing? I have questions.
Darling, it falls apart. It falls apart because people are not using the appropriate term, which is soda.
If I said to you, I want a fizzy drink, you'd be like, well, I'm going to need a lot more context than that.
Australia says soft drink.
Soft drink.
Which is also more acceptable than pop.
Well, now I've actually heard soft drink before, but what does the soft refer to?
No booze.
Oh.
Hard drink is alcohol. Soft drink is no booze.
But then juice could be a soft drink.
Yes.
See, no, soda is the answer. Soda is the right terminology because I need.
We get that out of our system. We just
I feel better. I feel better that I'm right. I love being right, and I'm glad that we've proved it. So nobody can argue with us. You are wrong.
The numbers don't lie.
Yeah, it's.
We are right. Everyone else is wrong.
Yeah. So thank you for coming to our TED Talk. I hope that you all now have decided you will use soda going forward. No more of this pop, fizzy drink, all of this business. We have corrected the universe. So Good for us. We did a service today. I'm glad. And I did want to just put a plug out here now that we've angered every single person in every...
Not New England,
yeah,
not California.
Basically every state and other countries to leave a review of our podcast. And go ahead and just tell us how angry you are while also leaving 5 stars because we only have 10 reviews. And if you don't, it's going to be really sad because it's really going to kill us. But no, I'm just kidding. Leave whatever review you want, but do that, please, because we love you. And even though we like to anger you, we also love you. So please do that. Helps people find the podcast and all of those things. And moving on to the big scene. So he puts the 2 sodas
behind his
back. And she has to pick one. And she reaches in to go pick one and he kisses her.
Well, before he does that, he says you have to sing for your supper.
Oh, you're right. And now I think we have a debate here of where this came from.
Well, I have a controversial part of it too.
Oh, I love controversy.
So where did you find it come from?
So I found it came from a little kids thing. It's called Little Tom Tucker. And I can read it because it's only 5 lines. It says, little Tommy Tucker sings for his supper. What shall he eat? White bread and butter. How will he cut it without e'er a knife? How can he marry without e'er a wife?
Okay. So it's a nursery rhyme.
Yep.
I have it is a song from the boys from Syracuse.
Okay.
And I don't know how I feel about this song.
Okay.
I
Tell
think
me all about it.
I think it is basically a song about women having to put out to find a man.
Well then, that's dark.
Well, one of the lines is trilling makes a fellow willing.
Oh boy.
So, and there's a couple other suggestive lyrics. I'm not going to say them because they're way more suggestive. So if you want to find them, look it up. But
What's the name of the song?
It's Sing for Your Supper.
By the Boys.
It's the boys from Syracuse is the
Boys
name
from
of the
Syracuse,
musical
okay.
that it's from.
Okay. Well,
It's women singing about you having to sing for food, and songbirds don't have to do anything other than sing to get fed.
I mean, okay. You've opened this door, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So you know how we said that we feel that there wasn't a lot of parallels in this episode? Well, if we're going to go down this road, we can go down this road. Women having to put out to get food would link back to Lorelai having to basically have the fact that she has no underwear on announced to get her muffins and coffee,
which she didn't even get because she had to serve herself.
Right, but we could make the comparison, so it could be the right reference. That's dark and interesting. Also, I think it was a woman that wrote this episode, so I don't think that would be the case, but I don't know. I mean, it is a different time.
It's a song that I did not really appreciate hearing, and I'm never going to listen to it again because it's just.
And now you're going to feel real weird if you ever have to say, you're going to have to sing for your supper.
Oh yeah, no, it's the implied nature of that song. It makes me uncomfortable.
And the Dean that comes up down the road would fit into that category of people who would say things like that. Not the Dean that's in this episode. We still stand this
extort
Dean.
her for a kiss.
This is true.
With a free soda.
True.
It's not free if you have to do something for it.
She said that. She said it's not free if I have to work for it.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's a little.
It's a little cringe. There's
a lot of little cringy things with Dean. They just add up. But anyways, so he makes her pick. She goes to pick. He kisses her, and she runs out that bitch. She is like, nope, not sticking around.
She steals.
She steals. Yeah, she steals. And I mean, look, we've all been in these situations where it's if something really awkward happens and we do something really stupid because we feel really awkward and we need to get out. It's very relatable. I think of like all of the 90s and 2000s TV shows where they show romantic relationships.
It's the deer in headlights or the deer hitting your Jeep.
Well, right. But what I was going to say is a lot of those shows, at least, I don't know if it's the same experience for you, but as a kid watching it, these teenagers were so confident in their relationships and they were so.
To be fair, they were all like 35 and not actually teenagers.
Yes, but most of these shows did not show the awkwardness of what it is to have a high school romance.
None of them are high school students because they're all 30.
Yeah, they all showed this like super confidence. So I remember thinking, in middle school to high school when I had to do my first kiss and all of these things, that like I needed to like know what I was doing and I needed to be really confident and I needed to do all these things because like that's what everybody else does. But that's just not the real experience. And this is way more realistic.
And they have professional writers. We don't. We're just making it up as you go along. And everyone is, even adults are making things up as you go along.
Well, right. But the first kiss is not normally this like firework, like, oh my God, amazing
it's awkward
things.
And uncomfortable. And you're second guessing whether or not you've done it right. And you're just like, I'm terrible at this. I'm going to die alone. And
yeah. And you're thinking about that for days afterwards. Like you're
days, weeks, like forever.
Right. So I thought that was really nice how well depicted that was. It was, she was excited and she was happy, but like also like, whoa, that just happened and that's a lot and I need like space. So I really appreciated that. But I wanted to ask you if you remember anything about your first kiss or even if it wasn't your first kiss, like a funny first kiss or memorable one.
So I thought back and I'm sure that I overanalyzed my first kiss to know it because it's.
Of course.
I remember awkwardness and just
in dating in general.
Yeah, well, just the whole experience was just brand new and uncomfortable when you're like 14, 15. Like it's just so awkward.
See, this is another thing, selective memories, because you don't have like specific memories. But for me, for my first kiss, I specifically remember I was in 6th grade and I was in a group of friends and it was a weird group of friends. And we had in our town, the elementary school and the middle school were connected by a path of woods. And so we went to the path of woods after school And his friends came on one side of the path. My friends came on the other side of the path. And they all were like, kiss, kiss, kiss. And it was like this whole thing. There was a bunch of people there. And it was really uncomfortable. And I didn't like it. And then it happened. And I literally was like, and I'm out.
Yeah, that's why you remember it, because it was traumatic.
Oh, it was so awful.
It was a whole production.
And I remember after it happened, like we both were like, well, what do we do? Like, do we hang out now? And I was like, yeah, I'm like really busy. I got to get back to homework. And I like pieced. I was like, no, I'm good. And we did not talk about that at all after. That was the most uncomfortable situation, but it was so typical of the time period of just like, you know, that was the thing you did. You like hung out with your friends and everyone went with everyone everywhere. We weren't like, we were all in groups all of the time. And it was just, oh, but it's so awkward and like so thankful that like a kiss like that never happened again, because that was a time. Now I didn't run, but I don't run. So, but I mean, I did.
You abruptly walked away.
I abruptly extracted myself from that situation. Yeah. So it was, it's just, you don't forget those things though, when they're that uncomfortable. I didn't shoplift. So there's that. I don't know what I would have shoplifted in the woods, but you know, you never know, I guess.
I mean, I just, that's why that's a core memory. It's an inescapable memory, because that sounds like every nightmare of everything that I've ever.
Oh yeah, it's awful. I actually am so curious if that path is still there, because we all used to go down that path, and like, especially like, I don't know if you still had like, it wasn't really called recess in middle school, but like, you know, like the break period time.
The free period, the study period.
Yeah, we would all like just casually like disappear off there and like see how long it would take for people to notice that we were just kind of meandering away. So I wonder if they've closed that. They must have, right? Like they had to have closed that up by now. I don't know. Be curious to take little Mosey, although I don't know if a grown adult should be on school property. So I don't know. Well, you know, I'm not trying to get arrested, but that's my memory. So from here, Rory runs off to Lane's and needs to immediately tell her that this has happened. And Lane suddenly seems in the know. Like all of this time we've been saying Lane has been totally oblivious, hasn't noticed that Rory is obviously crushing on Dean, but all of a sudden she does not seem surprised at all. She is like, oh, yeah, of course, the guy at the grocery store, and like, you're so lucky the new kid like kissed you. And it's like, girl, where you been? Like, you're here now, but where you been?
She goes into like CIA level research later on in this episode.
She does.
Like, his middle name is this. He likes this. He liked this. And then his best friend is this. And he had a cat when he was 4.
And he's allergic to walnuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't know if she just was playing it cool all this time, but she clearly knew based on this interaction that Rory was very interested in Dean, and she was very happy for her, but also jealous. It seemed there was a little bit of jealousy there.
They also then get caught talking about it by Mrs. Kim.
Yeah, and I mean, do you think that they were real slick with it? Like, do you think that
the Lord?
Lord. She kissed the Lord, Mama. Like, come on. Mrs. Kim is not that dumb. Come on.
No, you have to make something up out of it. Come on, like, oh, it's a boy my mother approves of, or something like.
Right. Like, make up something. Do better.
Because Lane went with some guy that her mother approved
Patrick
of
Cho.
And got kissed on the forehead. So
that's acceptable.
Yeah, go that route. Not God. Like, come on.
Yeah, it wasn't the best.
Mrs. Kim knows that they've never been to church. Like, let's be honest. She knows that they're not talking. She also later on in this episode shows that she heard every single part of this conversation.
Yeah. And so Rory and Lane go back and forth about just how excited she is, how awkward it was, how just all of the things. She didn't know if she did it right. Like, you know, all the things that we normally would think of. And it's just such a good encapsulation of teenage first love. Like,
well, it's a very good portrayal of the awkwardness of being a teenager in that moment. I don't think a lot of shows do it that way. And I think it's makes it hard to see yourself in the show if they're not awkward, because everyone is awkward at some point in their life. Just they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I was less awkward as a kid, got more awkward as I got older. So here we are. But in this conversation, they also talk about how Rory does not want to tell Lorelai that she has kissed a boy. And her reasoning is that, you know, Dean's been brought up in the past and she hasn't been super supportive of him, which I don't know is necessarily fair. Because in the past, the reason she wasn't supportive of Dean is she tried to not go to Chilton. Like after her mom put out all this money, she was like, I don't think I want to go because of a boy. So I don't know that it's fair to say Lorelai wasn't supportive of him.
I also think it's not fair to Rory that Lorelai's going into boys with her own baggage, because she was.
Don't we all though?
She was boy crazy when she was a kid, and she got pregnant very young, and she's just having those. This kid is my kid. This kid is my kid. This kid is my kid.
Yeah.
Oh my God, she's going. I'm almost to the finish line of getting this parenting thing done properly. I'm going to mess this up. I can't mess this up on the 1 yard line. I can't. I'm there. I'm home.
I mean, yes, but I feel like we all want. I mean, I don't have children, so I can't say our children, but like we all want the next generation to learn from our mistakes. We don't want them to have to go through the same pain and suffering that we went through.
I mean, learn from, but not repeat. Like she's not worried about learning. She's worried about repeating. Very clearly.
Right. So she's hoping that she can show that from what I experienced and the pain that I went through, you don't need to do those same things. You need to do better. You need to do better than me, so you don't have to experience that. And I think that Lorelai is definitely letting those interactions color how she deals with Rory. But I mean, I think that's a fair thing. It's really hard to not do that. When you watch someone about to drive off a cliff, you're not going to tell them not to stop. Like it's very hard to do. So, I mean, I get it, but it's another highlight of how they say that they tell each other everything, but their communication kind of sucks.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like driving off a cliff in a car with no brakes. It's inevitable. It's not something that you can stop. Like you can't say don't like boys or don't like girls or whatever you're into. Like you can't.
But you can't say don't mess up your life for a boy. So she tried to drop out of going to Chilton for a boy, which would have been a catastrophic mistake in the eyes of Lorelai and Rory anyways. Where
she'd have still been valedictorian.
Right, but she could have jeopardized her chances of going to Yale or Harvard.
She could have failed her high school years, senior year, junior, all of the important years, and still gotten into Yale. Her parents bought a damn building. Her grandparents bought a building.
Lorelai never wanted it to be because of her parents. She wanted Rory to do it on her own. And I think that's really important distinction. And her feeling like she would have had to lean back on the grandparents, it would be failure in Lorelai's eyes. Like that would have been a failure.
See, that's like the double standard. Like I just was joking with my brother recently where I expected him to be a doctor president because he's the youngest and I just make it his life harder. But you don't actually expect them to not need help at any step of the way. Like that's.
No, but you want them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and you don't want them to be reliant on other people, I think is where it comes down to. And for Lorelai, she doesn't want her to be reliant on Emily and Richard because it comes with strings.
Other people, it's Emily and Richard.
Because it comes with strings. It's not, you don't just get.
Although does it? Because she lives there for like a long time.
And do you think Emily treated her well when she lived there?
No.
Okay, well, I mean, we'll get into that when we get down the road, but that was strings. That was strings, if you ask me. We have different opinions. We have different viewpoints that we come from. So we'll definitely have those conversations. But I do think it makes sense. But it definitely highlights here that Rory is not feeling comfortable telling everything to her mother, even though they say that they share everything, which is just crazy.
My question isn't that short-sighted by Rory, given the size of the town? There's like 6 people in the town. Her mom is going to run into Miss Kim at some point, whether it's the grocery store or walking down Main Street or at Luke's or just in general. Like there's 5 people that live there.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say that both Lorelai and Rory don't think too far ahead. They very much do the whole, I can deal with this later. I mean, Lorelai did it with Max, where she definitely should have told Rory before, I don't know, Max showed up at the house. And they don't think beyond the moment that they're in, and it's a terrible decision to make.
Her not telling her mom, it's already out there. It happened in public, in front of people. Like,
right. I mean, based on what we know of the town, it's like 2 stores down from Luke's. Like, you think that no one saw that and told your mother? Like, really? Like, are you new to this town?
Even if it wasn't her mom, somebody told Miss Patty. Miss Patty had that information moments after it happened.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Somebody ran.
There were cameras in Doosey's. Let's be honest.
Somebody ran from Doosey's Market to Miss Patty's studio. Like she has spies.
Yeah. So instead of the British are coming, they're yelling Rory Christine.
Yeah, that's exactly.
That's exactly what happened. From here, Rory heads back home and Lorelai is got all of the stuff from the fridge all over the ground. And she is talking to a repairman on the phone, trying to resolve whatever is going on with the fridge. And it's one of those like typical homeowner moments, but it's an interesting homeowner moment because I'll be honest, I'm actually surprised that she noticed anything was wrong with the fridge because they literally don't use their fridge. The only thing I can think of it is used for is like to house leftovers.
Well, the Chinese food that she got out of the fridge,
Yeah.
and they put pizza and leftovers
Yeah,
from
leftovers. It's
ordering.
the leftover box is what it is. It's not for like fresh ingredients or anything like that.
So I think everyone has that experience of being on hold with a customer support person that is honestly trying to help you, but you have not at all the patience for it.
Yeah.
It's working customer service. No one that calls you has that patience. They are calling mad, they're calling frustrated, and it's an awful job. But it's just it's a humanizing moment. It's a way to develop the nature of I just can't even deal with. Like I'm angry for you through the TV because that sounds like my nightmare.
And it's a good balance too, though, between especially in this episode of showing Lorelai as the person who's trying to be Rory's friend and also Lorelai as the provider, because this is her in her stance of being the provider where she has to take care of these adulty things that nobody wants to deal with. And she's doing the best she can. I mean, she's being very assertive on the phone. She's not taking no for an answer. Now, she didn't get what she wanted. She still got the, ridiculous, basically stay home all day and probably the repairman won't show up window. But she's doing everything that she can to kind of be on top of this. So they're like kind of showing that good balance of like, yes, she's trying to be Rory's friend, but she also is doing all of the adult responsible
she's doing the mom things.
Yeah, which I think is really good to like put in there as a reminder, because a lot of the times I feel like I'm often like, wait, is she her best friend or is she her mother?
Well, there's a lot of shows have the problem of no one does adult things. No one goes to the grocery store. No one goes and sits on the phone talking to customer service about something. No one goes to get their oil. Like that never happens. And this show does it more than others, but still not in the frequency of a normal person's life. But I think it's immediately lacking in a lot of shows. Like Friends is famous for they just sit around, drink coffee.
Yeah, like what? Like we know what they do for work because they randomly mention it, but like, do you ever go? Like
3 times in a 15-year series. It's like, come on.
Yeah. Although one of my favorite shows. So like we're not gonna knock it over.
I'm not. I just it's one of those suspension of reality moments for TV because they have a vested interest in telling you a crazy entertaining story, and work is not entertaining.
Yeah.
But I like those moments because it kind of humanizes and makes you feel more invested in the show.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like it would have been a great moment for Rory to, tell her mother this could have been her moment, because at this point her mother does not know yet, but she doesn't. She chooses not to.
This is literally the only moment that you can tell your mom before someone else tells your mom.
Yeah, and it looks like she was trying to gear herself up to do it, but then realizes that her mom is having a tough time with the fridge situation and decides, probably not worth it. But it's like,
this is your one moment.
This is your moment.
The moment.
And your mom's mad at a repairman, but she's not mad at you. Like, she's just annoyed with the repairman situation. I don't think that it would have been a bad time, but it ends up being a bad time. And from there, Lorelai ends up going to Mrs. Kim's. And this is where it all unravels.
To pick up a chair that she bought 6 weeks ago.
Which I don't even think is that long, really.
I mean, it is long, but it fits in her character. It's absolutely the fact that she has other things and she doesn't prioritize picking up a chair. Now, is it a chair for her house?
I'm thinking the inn, because it's an antique, right?
It's got to be the inn.
That's what I was assuming. Now, we never actually get to see her ever pick up the chair, I don't think.
It's never picked. Like she bought something and it's still at Mrs. Kim's.
I like literally want to like go through scenes after this episode and be like, okay, is there a rocking chair anywhere in the scene that can insinuate that she's picked up this chair? Because I don't know that she has. Most of Mrs. Kim's stuff have like some antique value. Like I know in one of the episodes they talk about it being someone's shaving basin or something. So like they all have that, and they don't mention that for this rocking chair.
Antiquing is a real thing in New England. Like that's a serious business.
It's a fun time.
For those of you who don't know, we go hard about antiquing in New England. That's kind of also our thing because this is
Yeah,
where,
because we have such old things. We go
This
back
is
to
where
like
the
the
history's from.
1600s.
Yeah.
Other countries have us beat. Let's call that.
Yeah, but you don't have us beat in the United States.
No, you don't. But
no one has us beat.
comparatively, there's going to be somebody from another country going, you guys are adorable.
The 1600s. I thought you were going to say 600.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, fine. Yeah. So you also see a granny square blanket, by the way, which are totally in right now, if anybody was wondering.
Yeah, you've sold a couple actually.
Yeah. And they're
but
adorable.
It's the vibe of my grandmother's house. Like that's the blanket that you're thinking of in your head. That's what we see on the screen.
Yeah. And so Lorelai basically says she wants to pick it up. Mrs. Kim's giving her a hard time because it's been a long time since she, actually got this. And I don't even know how they got on the topic. Do you remember how they got on the topic?
You're so busy, you are not even taking care of your kid. Like you're busy,
Yes.
you're missing.
You're too busy. You didn't even notice that your daughter kissed a boy, or
Yeah.
you're letting your daughter go out and about kissing a boy. And Lorelai's basically like, I'm sorry, my daughter does not kiss boys. I don't know what we're talking about here. Absolutely not. Until Mrs. Kim says that it happened at the grocery store. And it was like a
It's
I don't know how to explain that sound effect that I just made. I make sound effects sometimes.
yeah. It's that moment she goes, Miss Patty said boy at grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
In an earlier episode, it's like, oh, that boy, he came by. I sent him to Doosey, and it's the whole giving up children, and she makes that connection.
Yes, she makes that connection quite quickly and realizes that Rory did not tell her. And I think in that moment, she is also realizing that her and her daughter don't have the communication that she really thought they had, and it's kind of a sad moment, and for me, anyways.
I mean, it's. You don't tell your parents everything. You don't tell your parents that you smoked a joint. You don't tell your parents that you kissed a boy. You don't tell those things. You don't tell your parents.
No, those things I write in my diary and I don't tell anyone.
You tell your best friend who's also a teenager. Like that is the appropriate use of your female friend.
But Lorelai wants to be that best friend. And I think that's the struggle that you deal with the whole show, is that Lorelai doesn't want to just be her mother. She wants to be her best friend. She wants to be the first person she goes to when these things happen.
Never. It'll never happen.
I mean, I don't know if I'd say never, but
it is just an effort of futility because she, first and foremost, it's mom.
Yeah.
You can't beat mom. I'm sorry. Like the house always wins. Mom always wins.
Yeah. I mean, and I think too, it's also juxtaposing Mrs. Kim's knowledge of Lane. I mean, the show tries to show that Lane keeps everything from her mother and doesn't respect her mother that way and all of that. But Mrs. Kim knows where her daughter has been. She knows what her daughter's talking about. Like
but she also very much does not. Her entire room is a CIA operative's like fantasy dream world room where she has floorboards and.
I mean, yeah, but what's more important, knowing about your daughter and who she's associating with, or knowing about what your daughter listens to for music?
Well, she also has like boy stuff and like makeup.
Later on, yeah. She has some things she
has like a black market industry in her bedroom of just keeping up appearances.
But I mean, given that though, don't you think that hearing it from Mrs. Kim of all people would be kind of offensive to Lorelai?
I think that's probably the last person that she would want to hear that from.
Yeah.
I think
if she heard it from Mrs. Patty, it would be like, I mean, of course, you were probably there eating vegetables.
You heard it first. You saw it firsthand, or you're everyone's first stop. Like Rory didn't have a chance to get the information to me before you told me.
Right.
That's Miss Kim is the last person to know.
Yeah.
Maybe the exception of Kirk or Taylor, Miss Kim is out of the loop. She's the last person.
Except she's not. Lorelai is. So I mean, I think it's a tough situation, and we'll get into kind of how Lorelai deals with this in a future episode because, spoiler alert, it ain't good. How she deals with this, but it's an interesting setup, and I do wish that they had paralleled this with something in Lorelai's life because I really think there was a lot of opportunity here.
Max is already an established character, for God's sakes. Literally, the first kiss for both of them, it would have been just the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, but I'm sure. I honestly don't now remember because we're getting so deep into these episodes, like exactly where different things happen. So I don't know how far out we are from other things, but I feel like this could have been a good moment. But anyway, that is the whole first section of the show. There isn't a lot of references, which I'm kind of sad about, which I think, again, might have to do with a different writer.
We'll get into more references because they came rapid fire
After
this. It was just
and things I don't even know what are. So it'll be interesting to get into. And it's also interesting that we're talking about a Thanksgiving episode in February. So I don't even know if this is on the list of Thanksgiving episodes, actually. I actually need to go back because people, put out there like the best Thanksgiving episodes from Gilmore Girls. And I don't think this is on the list.
No, because it's not, I mean, they're dressing up like pilgrims for Thanksgiving, but that's the bit. That's
the whole thing. That's the whole bit. So next time we're going to be starting off with Lane and Rory and their multitude of references as they're sitting on that park bench. So
yeah, as dressed as pilgrims again. Like this just unnecessary, just the absurdity to do it. Like,
which is so much fun. So we'll get into that next week.
What were they even doing? I don't even remember. Like they were just sitting there with like a pilgrim drive. Like what were they saving money for? Like it was bizarre.
We will have our theories.
Yeah.
We will start off next week with our theories of what they are saving money for. But that is everything for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please don't forget, like, share, save, all of those things, and leave us reviews because it means the world to us, and we will share them as soon as we get them.
And order Stan's book.
Order. It is tomorrow, I think, by the time you guys are listening to this.
Yeah, it's going to come out on the 13th. So buy it, and Amazon will have it to you on the day.
And if you bought it because you heard it here, please post that and like tag us and let us know, because I just want to know that people like heard it here. That would just make me feel excited because I love getting the word out for Stan's book. But okay, that is it. Thank you guys so much, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you all for listening.